Hey all, I'm Apurva and welcome back to WeDesified. We were asked multiple times on our channel to interview PhD candidates to get more insights about the PhD programs and research opportunities in the US. So today we are going to interview a final year PhD student, Vidhur Daulatabad. Vidhur is someone who came from a very ordinary background like most of us, has no one from his family with a technical graduation and still came to US to pursue his PhD in Bioinformatics with full funding and stipend. So far, he has published 13 research papers with 78 plus citations and still counting, while still being a PhD candidate. This is no ordinary feat, and he has to go through countless hours of hard work and sleepless nights to reach to this point. And there is something that we can all learn from his journey. So let's go and talk to Vidhur. But before that, if you find our content helpful, then please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your every like, comment and subscription really motivates us to keep making these useful videos. So subscribe and press that bell icon right now. First of all, let me tell you that this interview is going to be long since there is so much to talk about, starting from his application process to his master's, his admission into PhD, his PhD journey and how research is done in the PhD programs in the US. We want to make this interview useful to the aspiring PhD students as well as the current PhD students. So we are going to break this interview into chapters so that if you are interested in a specific part of his journey, then you can watch only those chapters. But we recommend to watch the entire video so that you can learn and be better prepared with your journey. And I assure you that there will be so much useful information. So let's begin. Hi Vidhur, welcome to WeDesified.
Hey Apurva, I'm so excited to be here. I really love the content you make at WeDesified and I'm looking forward to making this interview.
Well, thank you. And so we both have been friends for the past 5 years. We both are PhD students. And when we approached Vidhur to do this interview, he readily agreed. So thank you so much. I'm sure his experience will help all the prospective and current PhD students. So let's start from the beginning. Like, could you tell us more about your background, your undergraduation, and what was your motivation to study abroad?
Since my childhood, I was fascinated with biology, especially genetics was very interesting for me. So I always wanted a career in that's focused primarily on genetics and biotechnology. So I picked up biotechnology as my specialization for my bachelor's. And the turning point in my career was actually having an internship at Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, which is a CSIR institute in India. And this helped me a lot, and I had a very steep learning curve, which basically exposed me to a lot of bioinformatics. And it was very intriguing for me, and then I picked up the skill set there, and then wanted to be a PhD since then, and then started my journey for it.
That's very interesting. So what kind of skill set did you pick up from your undergrad?
So apart from the academic learning I had at college, I actually had two good opportunities where I had a lot of exposure. One was the CCMB, obviously, where I actually had practical data sets that I can work with and make inferences and come up with a hypothesis and did actual research there. That was really helpful. And that is where I actually picked up some programming and scripting skill sets too. At the same time, I also had an opportunity of working at the then Andhra Pradesh Forensic Science Lab.
Oh, wow.
It was very fascinating to perform sequencing there. We learned a lot about how microsatellites are identified, and we performed sequencing, and we actually used to solve crime.
This sounds very fascinating. Like working in a forensic lab, solving real crimes. I mean, it's really so interesting. So Vidhur, tell me, like when you wanted to apply for PhD, did you directly apply after your undergraduation, or how did you go about with this entire process?
So to be honest, I actually, although I wanted to do a PhD since like my undergrad, I did not apply for a PhD directly because I've seen friends and like seniors who got rejected by applying for a PhD. So that put me a little back, and I was like, I wanted to make sure like I have a career and like not stop at like a PhD application. So I basically applied for masters, but I mentioned in my statement of purpose that I want to do a PhD
Okay.
moving down, and that's what you have to focus on. Like when you're actually writing an SOP, you have to mention your future plans too. That gives a better idea for the admission committee.
So like when you got admitted, then you got admitted for the masters, right? Not for PhD, but you in the SOP you had mentioned about your interest in pursuing PhD.
Correct.
So in the offer letter which you got, did the school mention that you will be continued as a PhD student or something like that? Like did they give any sort of hope for you that you might be able to pursue PhD after your masters?
Not actually, but like I was able to get in contact with like some of the professors, where I actually saw that I could perform like really good research, and I was hopeful that like this research would basically lead to a doctorate degree.
So then, did you get any kind of scholarship or any tuition fee waiver or any sort of like assistantship in terms of financials from the school?
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of the reasons I picked up IUPUI. I had other admits too, like UNCC and Georgia Tech, but I picked up IUPUI because one, it has a lot of collaborative research. We have a school of medicine, so we basically get a lot of data from them too that we can actually work on. Apart from that, the department actually gave me a 40% scholarship with the admission itself.
That is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, during my masters,
Yeah.
and a research assistantship for 10 hours.
Getting a 40% scholarship and also RA job with the offer letter, it's incredible. And I think that's one of the main questions all the students applying for masters abroad have is how to approach the department or the college for funding, like how to get these scholarships. So what do you think like helped you to get the scholarship?
So first of all, you have to when departments like basically give scholarship, what they initially look for is return of investment, meaning if they fund you, how are you going to return it, right? Like what is the product they're going to get? So that comes in basically most of the times is publications, like how you basically produce projects in that given department. So you basically have to show your skill set, project your skill set on your SOP, saying that this is all I'm capable of, and I have ABC skill set that can actually help your research. And it's also a very good idea to actually look up what projects the faculty is working on, and that's going to help you a lot in understanding like how to frame your SOP.
And so also Vidhur, like you mentioned that in your SOP you specifically wrote about your research interest. So do you think that also helped you to get this job, or like did you like approach professors for say separately apart from your SOP to get the job? So how do you think people should move forward with this?
So yeah, like I said, when admission committee is actually looking at an SOP, what they're looking for is somebody who's committed and who has a vision, who's able to see 5 to 10 years ahead of time and where they want to be in 5 years. And if you are able to if you're able to visualize that and express that in your SOP, it's really going to boost your application, right? And once you have already submitted your admission, it's a really good idea to actually reach out to the professors, leave them an email saying that, hey, I actually looked at your projects. This paper looks really interesting. Actually, I have a skill set or a project that I've previously worked on which kind of overlaps with your research, and I think I'd be a great addition to your team, and ABC are the things that I actually bring to the table if I actually join your lab.
Definitely, this is going to help a lot. So yeah, I think the key points are like don't be shy into like reaching out and don't wait for others to reach you. So just write in your SOP, mention about it, reach out to the professors, and we have an example right here, so you will get it. So Vidhur, how was your masters? Like, did you take the thesis option or the coursework option? Like, how was your entire masters journey?
So I actually, since I was planning a career in academia and PhD, I picked up the thesis option in my master's, which is why I also had 20 hours of RA. and I had the coursework too. So it was a little hectic, not little, quite hectic to actually manage my coursework, the research, and the thesis. So it was a little hectic but manageable. Um,
So then, when did your transition from this master's to PhD happen?
So I actually spoke to my professor, then professor, about my PhD, in the first semester itself, and then he said, "Let's look at some progress and research, and then we'll talk about it." So he wanted to see some promise in my work before he could like tell me that I can join the PhD. So after a year or so, like in my third semester, he actually told me that I can join, and he's ready to offer a PhD. But I was left with very few credits to finish my master's. So I said, might as well finish master's before starting PhD.
Right. So then, so was it like an automatic transition? So you completed your master's and then you were directly admitted to PhD program?
Almost like that, but I still had to do an official application to the school
Okay.
for a PhD. But it was almost like a transition.
Okay. So since you already completed your master's now from Indiana University, did you not think about applying for PhD programs in some other university? Like, did you not look out for other options? Why did you think of continuing in the same department?
So I was very certain about the admission here, and more importantly, I actually knew the research that was happening in the department, which is basically like I have a foundation here. I've already established my work here. That was the primary reason. And apart from that, so what happens usually in a PhD application is you're supposed to like give an interview.
Right.
You have to submit SOP, LORs, but some of these bits were waived off for me because I'm a bit of exception in the department. I had such a good rapport with the professors that the interview was waived off, and the admission committee itself was the recommenders for the application. So I did not even have to submit LORs for my PhD application. And more importantly, I actually had all of my 30 credits from my master's transferred into my PhD.
Because now you transition directly from masters to PhD with all the 30 credits being transferred. So you must have started your PhD in what, your third year or something?
Yes.
Okay, so then do you think starting PhD in your third year, was it advantageous or what was it like?
Well, in a way, yes, and in a way, no. Yes, because I completed most of my coursework and I could focus mostly on my research. That was very helpful. But there were some bad parts to it also, because initially the lab I thought I would be joining, that didn't really work out because the PI she got another job and she had to leave from there. So I had to go for a lab rotation, for a semester before I came into the current PI's lab. That was a little bit of struggle, and over that I also had because I was a third year PhD student, I had to take my qualifiers immediately.
Okay. So, yeah, so this is one big hurdles for PhD students. So after 1 year, basically, into your PhD program, you have to appear for the qualifying exams and you have to pass those if you want to continue. Otherwise, you have to leave the program. So, what was your entire qualifying exams experience like?
Well, I was actually an exception there also.
Okay.
Because what happened is, I was under the assumption that I would give my qualifiers like a year or so later, but I was immediately told that like 2 weeks before the qualifiers, the department head actually wrote an email saying that, hey, you have to take your qualifiers in 2 weeks. That was shocking, first of all. So those were like really hard 2 weeks. All I was doing is eating, sleeping, and studying, because you know how hard these qualifiers are. But somehow I actually passed. Around like 8 PhD students gave that qualifiers that semester, and only 2 of us passed.
As a PhD student, I can totally relate, and I know how stressful it is to give this comprehensive exams. So each PhD programs have their own set of comprehensive exams, their own set of rules, and how the exam pattern is conducted. So, what is like in your department, like in bioinformatics? How are these comprehensive exams conducted?
Well, first of all, I have a feeling that you're actually enjoying me reliving my nightmares. But there's 3 layers to the comprehensive or the qualifiers exam, especially in our department. The first one is the written one. This is basically you're basically tested for your knowledge in 5 core subjects of your stream. So you have to give 5 exams in 2 days, and the cutoff is you have to at least make 85% in each subject across these 5 papers. And if you pass the written exam, then there is the Viva OC, where there's a committee that basically tests your presentation skills, how you're able to understand an idea and like present it. And it's literally a test, like you have to answer their questions, and this goes on about like 2 hours. This 2 hours of Viva OC. They test your width and breadth of your knowledge, how many concepts do you know, and how well do you know each of these concepts. So basically they test you, and then they tell you if you have passed the Viva OC or not. And after passing the Viva OC, you actually have you have to write a review paper. It's basically compiling all of your domain knowledge and writing a paper.
Okay.
And if you basically pass this, then you're good, like you basically qualify as a PhD candidate. If not, you get another chance, and if you fail, then also you just have to leave with masters.
That sounds very intense, and I'm sure it must be very taxing for you to complete your comprehensive exam in that short period. So, like, were you relieved once you got your results?
Definitely, I was very, very, very relieved, especially given that I just had my minor coursework to finish and just by research. So it was very relieving for me to get through the qualifiers.
Totally makes sense. So, Vidhur, initially you mentioned about lab rotations. Can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. So when PhD students actually join a school, they basically have to go around multiple labs to check which PI work they like the most. So they basically get to see which PI is working on which project and which PI has what grants. Based on that, like you basically understand where you fit in and like which lab you like the most. And this is called a rotation. It's a common practice across PhDs to go around and do lab rotations.
Looks like knowing what kind of research goes in that lab and what kind of grants they have, it would be really helpful for the prospective students to get this piece of information. So is there a way where the students can get this information prior to the application process?
Yeah, definitely, right. So you can always visit the PI's website or look up their publications. That's going to give you an idea on what projects they are working on, and it's going to put an idea or like you'll understand the agenda of their primary research. But there's a little hack I've learned over the years, is that you basically look at, if you scroll down in their publications, you would find what is called the acknowledgement section. And in the acknowledgement section, they're supposed to mention what is their funding agency and which grant is funding them. And if you actually look up that grant, it's going to give you an agenda of like what is their primary research question and how much they are funded for and how long they are funded for, which is going to give you an idea where you would fit perfectly and where you are most likely to succeed.
Definitely. So that will help you to match with your research interest as well as understand about the funding situation. So that's a really good suggestion. By the way, Vidhur, in our economics department, we don't have these labs, and like most of us work independently on our research. So this is something new to me. So tell me, like, how do you complete your PhD? Like, what are the requirements? How do you graduate in your department?
So like you said, this is a very important point. A lot of these criteria actually differ from department to department, but primarily most of them stick to like one big skeleton, that's clearing your qualifiers and finishing up a given set of credits, which in our case is 90 credits in both of our case.
90 credits.
And then usually the primary agenda of a PhD is to actually develop a hypothesis, right? You have to defend this thesis. So for this thesis, you have to develop basically multiple chapters, which is usually 3 chapters, each of them having one or multiple publications. And then you basically pick up a thesis committee and you have to do what is called a proposal defense. Which is basically an approval of your thesis. Your thesis committee comes together and says, hey, your plan looks good, you can proceed. But there's a trick here. Once you defend your proposal, you have only 1 year to actually defend your primary thesis, right?
And this is very useful, like for the timeline's sake, like you can plan your graduation and get an idea of things. So tell me, like, what are the career opportunities after graduation with bioinformatics?
So there's two schools of thought here. People who graduate with a PhD degree usually go with an academic focused career, which will usually involve doing a postdoc or having a lot of teaching experience and then becoming a professor. And then there is the industry career, where you basically work as a senior scientist or a research scholar. And this would obviously pay more than the academic one, initially at least. But even in the industry, there's like public and private sector, and obviously the profit-making private sector pays more than the public sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And like once you start your PhD, then it's all about research. Doesn't matter where you go, it's going to be all research. So on that note, let's talk about research papers. So like how and where do you start?
So in our lab, at least, we have like 3 pipelines where you actually get your publications from. The primary one is your thesis. In these projects, you are the primary author. You lead the study, and there will be other students who are actually helping you. And then there is the collaborative research, where other colleagues of your PI or other universities and other institutes actually reach out to you for collaborative research, and then you can publish from there too. And then there is the mentoring research, where there is another grad student or an undergrad or sometimes even a high school student. You basically mentor them, you assist them in their research. They lead the project, but you're just a co-author there. So you can publish from all these 3 pipelines.
But then Vidhur, how do you start? Like where do you get the idea from? And
so most of the time, ideas are usually generated by the PI himself or herself. So what happens is they already have a grant, and based on that grant, they have already agenda and already have project ideas they need to work on for supporting that grant, right? So you usually work on them. If not, you can also chip in novel ideas, and if the PI likes it, they'll be happy to publish it.
Right. Makes sense. So what is the life cycle of the research paper? Like where do you start and how do you get it published?
Right. So it usually starts with the conception of the idea. The PI usually comes up with an idea, and then you obtain the data. Most of the time, because I'm a bioinformatician, I'm basically producing the perspective of a bioinformatician, but it could differ in a different stream. Like a biomed stream would have a little different perspective. But for a computational biologist or a bioinformatician, you basically get the data. It could be your peers, it could be your collaborative research, or it could be already published data. So you get this and you finalize your methodology because you already have an idea in place, you already have a hypothesis in place, you just want to prove it. And you basically come up with the methodology and you confirm with your PIs that this is the methodology I want to follow. And then once that is done, the best practice is to actually write down your methods while you're actually performing the experiment itself, right? And once you have that in place, you basically compile all the results and make your observations and come up with a manuscript. And you basically provide this manuscript to your PI, and they come back with feedback. You address the feedback and you basically submit it to a journal.
What happens after you submit to the journal?
So in a peer review research, what happens is the editor basically, once you submit the manuscript, the editor basically allots a couple of reviewers who are basically experts in this domain. These guys go through your research and make sure everything is in place and what you are claiming to be right is actually right. And they come back with comments saying that, hey, how do you support this assumption, or how do you make sure like this claim is very significant? And you basically address those comments, and if the reviewers are satisfied with that, then editor gives you the good news that your paper, your publication is accepted.
So then how do you find these journals, and how do you know that this is suitable for you?
So what happens is, most of the time you basically publish in a given set of journals that are very specific to your domain, right? So there's a given set of bioinformatics journals that we submit to and publish in. And then there's also there's a scale on which is a good journal and which is like a smaller journal. And this scale is called impact factor. Is basically a quantification of how large is the audience that is reading this journal, right? And depending on like how intense and extensive your work is, you basically submit to that specific scale of impact factor, right? And usually what happens is we basically shoot it a little bit higher because it's never wrong to
Right.
actually aim a little higher, right? But you basically submit according to your impact factor, and then a paper gets accepted and gets published.
Okay, so then how much time does it take for the publication? Like once you have submitted, how much time will it take to actually publish?
So it again depends on the journal. Smaller journals where the number of manuscripts that come in are less, it's much faster. Sometimes seven, like your paper gets published in like 2 months. But when it comes to a bigger journal where like there is a lot of manuscripts to review for the editor, it takes like around 6 months or even more sometimes. Yeah.
So there are some conference journals, like conference publications as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what happens is sometimes there are publications that are associated with the conference. These are called conference issue publications. So they come out in the same journal, but as a special conference issue. So you have to present in the conference. You have to go there and actually present your work and go through a peer review to actually publish this. So apart from the regular issues of this journal, there will be a special conference issue where your manuscript will be published.
I totally agree. Conferences are so much fun. You get instant feedback and appreciation and also instant reach. So it is definitely fun. So Vidhur, usually when does a new PhD student start working on the actual research?
So this changes from domain to domain. In bioinformatics, usually PhD students end up publishing at least 5 or 6 papers by the end of their PhD. But this would drastically change when you talk about a different domain like a biomed or a biotech based domain. In that, usually PhD students end up publishing just 1 or 2 really good quality papers towards the end of their PhD. So usually PhD students actually don't publish in the first few years of their PhD, because what happens is initially the course load is so much, you invest most of your time in actually attending the courses itself. And there is also it takes time to actually pick up the lab also, because you have to do a lot of lab rotations, and once you're done then you get to actually see what research there is, and then there is going to be like once you start working on collaborative projects and your thesis, then there's going to be production of papers.
Right. So I think you have some 13 papers and 78 citations. So when did you start working on your research papers? Like, did you do any of your research papers in your undergrad?
So I did not have any papers from undergrad, but my first publication came out a semester after I joined the current lab I am in. But that's also a little quick. I was capable of doing that because I already had a good head start from my masters, and I already understood how research works, and I was able to write well. So that helped me.
Okay, so basically you started in the first year of PhD. So okay, that makes sense. And then with all this pressure regarding publications comes the stress associated with it. So what's your take on the stress in the PhD program?
Well, first of all, I would like to acknowledge that there's a lot of stress in a PhD. And you actually question on an everyday basis, like, why am I doing this? And like, why am I putting myself through this, right? Like, and is it all worth this effort? And it's not really a PhD if your imposter syndrome is not kicking on a weekly basis, right? But as you get old in the PhD program, as you go through years and years of research, you'll actually learn and grow, and you basically will learn that you don't measure academic success in publications, right? And you don't come to a conclusion until the end of your PhD program. And you'll also learn that you shouldn't associate your self-worth with like academic productivity, right? And all of this gets better, way more better, once you have like a good PI who's supporting you through the process and whose values are actually aligning with yours, who understands your strengths and weaknesses, and so it is very important to actually pick PI, and it will make your life way more easier. And apart from all of this, there is a major key role that friends and life outside PhD plays. So it is very important to actually have a support group like I have you. You guys,
We
you
have
guys
each
are-
other.
You guys are amazing. So it's very important to actually have friends and life outside PhD. It kind of balances your professional and personal life.
And also, like Vidhur, how do you manage your stress?
So the primary part of my stress management is actually having a routine and sticking to it. Having like self-discipline is very important. You make a routine and like stick to it throughout your weeks, and it helps you a lot and makes your life very decluttered. And a big part of this routine is going to the gym for me. I love being physical, and going out and like having outdoorsy fun. And also a good part of my work life and personal life balance comes from extracurricular contribution to the student community at IUPUI. I also happen to be the ex-president and the co-founder of Desi Jags, which also helped me see a bigger picture and helping a lot of students improve this balance. And I also have a set rule that weekdays are for work and weekends is for fun. So I strictly keep that boundary and stick to it, and kind of helps me keep that balance.
Yeah. I know we can talk on this topic forever and still won't be done with it. So before we end this discussion for today, what advice would you like to give the current and prospective PhD students?
I like to say invest your time in actually picking up new skill set, reading literature and understanding research, and have like good work-life balance, like have a good ethic. And I always say that enthusiasm is actually very common. Like people get excited, but discipline is very rare. So make sure you're investing and growing your discipline, and make that your strength. And most importantly, if you want to do a PhD, the primary thing is understanding why you want to do a PhD. And if you have this why as why strong, this reason as strong and established, your chances of being successful PhD and successful researcher goes up really high.
Thank you so much, Vidhur, for giving us your valuable time and talking with us today. It is very insightful, and I'm sure that it will help and also motivate a lot of students who are watching it right now. Whether you're a current PhD student or a prospective PhD student, it will definitely help them. And also, I know that you gave your proposal defense early this year and planning to defend your thesis this year. So, all the very best for that. I know you will achieve great things in your life. So, all the best and congratulations as well.
Hey, thank you so much, Vinder. Thank you for having me here. It's really, you guys make really good content. It's very inspiring, and it's very resourceful for a lot of people. I wish I had this content when I was actually starting my career. But yeah, like thank you so much for having me here. Hope this helps a lot of people.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. Thank you so much. So that's all we have for today. I hope it was useful. We will come up with more interviews soon. If you find this content helpful, then please like and share this video. And if you have any questions, then you can ask us in the comment section below. We will reply and make more videos answering all your questions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time, keep learning. Bye-bye.